Today's lesson is Lesson 4, Benjamin Franklin. What image comes to mind when you hear the name Benjamin Franklin? Perhaps a white-haired man holding tightly to a kite as a bolt of electricity lights up the sky. Or do you think of a distinguished figure signing the Declaration of Independence? Either picture would be correct. But today, as we get to know Franklin, you will see how much more there is to the colorful and tireless patriot who was curious, full of humor, and fiercely dedicated to the causes he undertook. He went by many names throughout his life: Silent Doggood, Richard Saunders, Poor Richard, and Bonhomie Richard. Today, though, let's find out about the most notorious nickname, the first American. Do you have lots of brothers and sisters? You likely don't have as many as Benjamin Franklin. Born January 17, 1706, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the city of Boston, Franklin was number 15 of 17 children. His father was a candle and soap maker and pulled him out of school at 10 years old to help with the family business. Life was very different living in colonial America. Can you imagine going to work at just 10 years old? Soap making was hot and tedious work and didn't appeal to Franklin. Even as a youngster, he was a voracious reader and had a natural gift for writing. Before too long, he started looking for a different path to earn his way in the world. When his father suggested becoming an apprentice to Franklin's older brother James at a print shop, he jumped at that chance. While today you might go to college or take specialized courses to learn a trade, an apprenticeship was how trade was done in colonial America. A young man would work for someone who had mastered a trade, such as printing, shipbuilding, or blacksmithing. It was a pretty good system, but the only catch was the pay. It was nothing. In exchange for passing on the knowledge to the next generation, a master craftsman got free labor for 7 to 10 years. Does this seem fair to you? What job in the colony sounds interesting to you? Silent Doggood. Franklin enjoyed working at the print shop, but he loved writing even more. When James started a weekly newspaper, Franklin was disappointed that his brothers wouldn't allow him to contribute. So at age 16, he wrote and submitted to his brother's paper a series of commentaries written from the perspective of a middle-aged woman bearing the name Silent Doggood. Franklin was already a good writer, and his audience enjoyed his funny criticisms of colonial life. But his brother was less than impressed. He eventually broke the apprenticeship contract with James because of the ongoing conflict. He ran away to Philadelphia at age 17 and found work there as an apprentice printer. After spending time in London, Franklin returned to Philadelphia in 1726. He opened up a successful print shop in 1728 that printed paper money for the state of Pennsylvania, as well as various books and government pamphlets. In 1729, he became the owner of the Pennsylvania Gazette, and a few years later, he began writing and publishing the very popular Poor Richard's Almanac. Poor Richard's Almanac. Have you ever heard of the almanac? In today's technology-advanced world, there is not as much use or demand for them, but in Franklin's day, it was the news, entertainment, and a calendar all wrapped up into the yearly volume. An almanac included weather forecasts, astronomical and tide charts, and recipes, as well as poems and stories. Poor Richard's Almanac was published from about 1732 to 1758 and sold up to 10,000 copies a year. This was a huge circulation for colonial times. Franklin wrote it under the presidium of Richard Saunders, also known as Poor Richard's. But Richard was known for his witty and often funny sayings. Talk through some of them and try to figure out what they mean. Then decide if you agree with all of them. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. He that lies down with the dogs shall rise up with fleas. Search others for their virtues, thyself for thy vices. Blessed is he who expects nothing, for he shall never be disappointed. Half the truth is often a lie. Do you love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. And those are just a few of the witty and funny sayings. During this period, Benjamin Franklin also started a men's group called Junto, which met every Friday to discuss politics and philosophy. He loved to debate and learn from others and was writing more than ever. He started to use his writing to try to improve his city, Philadelphia, and found great satisfaction in civic endeavors. He wrote the plans for the first police force, which he called a paid city watch, and he also proposed plans for a fire department and a library. Franklin's interest in improving the city was ongoing. He felt it was the most important thing he could do, and one of his dearly held virtues. Franklin was successful in many endeavors. He grew to be quite wealthy, so much so that he was able to retire from the printing world around 42. He moved to the countryside outside of Philadelphia and continued working on the civic projects that he so was devoted to. He pursued another interest that would define his life as well, the science of electricity. Franklin had a hunch that electricity and lightning were one and the same, and after much research he proved this in his famous kite experiment. Franklin was able to harness lightning through a metal wire attached to his kite in a lightning storm, and when it passed through the string and into the metal key at the opposite end of the kite string, he got an electrical shock. This and other discoveries were published in 1751, Experiments in Finding in Electricity. When his book was published, it impressed and amazed the scientific world. Franklin was famous. As a well-known leader in his community and with more time on his hands due to retirement, Franklin began participating in local public offices and became a Philadelphia City Council member. Soon after, he was elected as a member of the Pennsylvania Assembly. What he really wanted, though, was a post in the British government. He greatly admired the powerful system it had established. His wish came true in 1753, when he was appointed Deputy Postmaster General and became responsible for all the mail for the northern colonies. The Plan of the Union. In 1754, Franklin presented an important proposal to the Colonial Assembly. His plan of union, remember, he was very much still loyal to the British Empire, and this was actually a plan for the colonies to unite under British control to defend themselves against France. This plan involved establishing a General Assembly with representatives from each colony. Franklin was ahead of his time, however, and the plan was not approved. It did give him important experience in diplomacy, though, by working together with both the colonial government and Parliament. Franklin even created a cartoon to encourage the colonies to unify against France in his strange twist. It was reused during the Revolutionary War to promote unity, but this time against the British. Soon after, the Pennsylvania Assembly sent Franklin as an agent to London, and he spent much of the next 18 years of his life there. Since he was now well known because of his scientific findings, he rubbed elbows with the powerful citizens of London and was even able to use his influence to get his son William appointed as governor of New Jersey. His son had accompanied him to London, but his wife Deborah was afraid of the long sea journey and refused to come with him. She remained at home in Philadelphia with their daughter Sarah. Franklin was in London while the divisive events we have been studying were taking place. He had always been a loyal supporter of Britain, but the new conflicts began to change his mind. After the Boston Tea Party, he was convinced there could be no resolution between the two groups. Always one to bring humor to a situation, he wrote this song, represent the changing relationship between Britain and her colonies. We have an old mother that peevish is grown. She snubs us like children that scarce walk alone. She forgets we've grown up and have sense of her own, which nobody can deny. When he was fired from his job as postmaster, he returned to the colonies. This was the turning point for Benjamin Franklin. His reputation as a founding father was set in stone as the next month saw his participating in the establishment of independent nation and finally in 1776, signing his name on the Declaration of Independence. For all of his patriotism, Franklin really felt most at home in Europe, so he jumped at the chance to head to France as the first American ambassador. The brand new American government needed allies, so they sent Franklin to France with two goals: encourage the French government to recognize their newly independent country and obtain support in the form of money, as fighting a war and establishing a new country were not cheap. He was successful on both fronts and even played an important part in the Peace of Paris, the peace treaty that ended in the Revolutionary War in 1783. He thoroughly enjoyed his years as ambassador to France. He was doing exactly what he always wanted to do, working in public service and making a real difference in the world. The French people loved him because of his reputation as a scientist and the author of Poor Richard's Almanac. They referred to him as Bon Hobby Richard, good man Richard. As his health failed, he decided to retire and return to the United States. Benjamin Franklin owned enslaved people throughout his younger life, but came to his young adult life, but came to view slavery very differently as he got older. He eventually freed two of his enslaved men he owned and became an outspoken anti-slavery advocate, even signing a petition to outlaw slavery in the United States shortly before his death. There are two things we can learn from this. First, it is never too late to admit and remedy our mistakes. Never be afraid to change your mind if God shows you that you've been wrong. Second, God will use us despite our faults. The Holy Spirit convicts us of our sin and changes our heart. God's specialty is redemption. He is constantly saving us from our own errors and making us new. Isn't that amazing? For a man as industrious as Benjamin Franklin, retirement looked a little different than it might for others. He imagined days spent writing and experimenting, but he was asked to help write the United States Constitution soon after he returned to Philadelphia. The civic-minded Franklin obliged, and at 81 he was the oldest delegate to the Constitutional Convention. This would be his last major political achievement. He died in 1790 at the age of 84. His legacy would include many titles: printer, writer, politician, scientist, inventor, founding father. He played each of these roles with humility and honor, working to unite the colonies and improve life for their people. He also considered service to his country as more important than his personal accomplishments and earned his moniker, the first American. Let's talk about it. Benjamin Franklin changed his views on slavery late in his life. While he formerly owned two enslaved men, he later became an abolitionist and was outspoken in his views that slavery should be outlawed. Discuss Franklin's change of view. Why do you think he changed his mind on this issue? How do you feel about people around him reacted? Would it be difficult to be outspoken on this issue at this time? Have you ever stood up for what is right even though others disagreed? And what does that feel like? And this concludes our lesson 4 for today.